Let's talk quickly and briefly about that sense of urgency. You mentioned trade unions. I declare my interest as a member of the GMB. Trade unions warn that your 2030 targets means that you'll be buying all this supply chains and manufacturing stuff off the shelf from other countries rather than building up the manufacturing base here. Also, left behind in your rush to 2030 might be communities. I'm intrigued about what you said about the planning and infrastructure bill and how you have to make a bargain with people. It has to be community benefit. I'd rather see community share, and in Denmark and Germany, 20% is owned, each wind farm is owned by the local municipality or community. Will your planning bill include a 20% offer to municipalities, communities, and if not, why
I
not?
can't guarantee you of that, but I have read your questions and what you've said about this, and indeed you and I have talked about this community share issue, and I think it's a really interesting issue. And if you think about our local power plan, our GB Energy local power plan, it's absolutely about the idea. And if you talk to RWE, for example, they say, look, as a matter of course in other countries, for example, Germany, we might be building significant onshore wind, but some of it will be owned by the community. And I think absolutely community share.
Who's taking the stage? Ed Miliband, the very man who led his party into the 2015 election and made a complete fool of himself, then quietly stepped aside. Years later, he's back, acting as if nothing ever happened, now Labour's spokesperson on energy policy. So Starmer is putting him in the window because he himself doesn't inspire confidence. Miliband is still telling the same old story. Completely clean energy by 2030. It sounds nice, but no one is asking. Ed, you couldn't even manage your own party. How are you going to manage the energy transition of a whole country? This man is a symbol of failure. He lost, he left, and now he's back in Starmer's shadow. Let's be honest. He has zero credibility in the public eye. Do you think it's realistic to expect energy security from this man? Or is this just Labour's window dressing? Write your comments. Let's discuss. And of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe.
And looking at the issue of community ownership will be part of our GB Energy local power plan. And we should be open to all of these issues because, part of what we want to do is show in practice that this change, this clean energy transition that we are embarked upon can have direct benefits for people. So I think it's an idea we should pursue.
And just quickly, on this worry about supply chain jobs and manufacturing jobs going abroad rather than coming here.
Look, here I think is the reality, which is the concentration in supply chains has been built up over a long period. And I'm afraid it's because the last government didn't take the view that we needed to build in Britain, or at least not sufficiently. I have a different view, which is it really matters that we build our own supply chains. It really, really matters because this is a massive jobs opportunity. And as Keir Starmer says, the Prime Minister says, why not us? That's why we're putting in these place these new institutions. But if people say to me, well, look, while you're putting in place these new institutions to build supply chains in the UK, why don't you sort of down tools, and I know you're not saying this, but down tools and wait until the supply chains in Britain are built and then get on with your thing? I think it'll be grossly irresponsible for the reasons that I've set out, because we're leaving ourselves exposed to the biggest energy security challenge we face, which is these fossil fuel markets, which we as a government have no control over.
Thank you. It's been put to me that there is a potential and a real concern that a withdrawal, an early withdrawal from the North Sea, will impact the total receipts from the energy profits levy and the other oil and gas related taxes. What is your response to that concern?
Well, look, I said to Talkwell that our dialogue with Aberdeen Chamber of Commerce, OE UK and others is really important, and it is partly that dialogue, and obviously I don't determine tax policy and I should be very careful not to suggest I do, but that led to some changes in relation to capital allowances that were announced in the budget by the Chancellor, and that followed that dialogue. It's really, our manifesto was clear about this, which is we will keep existing oil and gas fields open for their lifetime, decades to come. We will not issue new licenses to explore new fields. And the truth is that new licenses to explore new fields are a relatively marginal part of the future prospects for the North Sea. It's really, but we are led by the science in saying that. And I think what's important to say is that we can both achieve the just transition that we seek and maintain confidence and indeed tax receipts in the North Sea, from the North Sea, and at the same time build the future in the way that I've talked about. And that's what we are determined to do.
Thank you very much. Bradley Thomas, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Secretary of State, for coming. So, late last year, the NESO report assessing the system costs of delivering the Clean Power 2030 plan assumes a carbon price of £147 per tonne of CO2. That's the highest in the developing world, and I understand that it's £60 per tonne higher than the assumption that your department is working to. So, given your reliance upon the independence of NESO in the recent past, which assumption is your department working to?
I can write to you on the specifics around the carbon price. I think the important thing on the NESO report is what it shows about the potential for lower bills. I know you had Finton before your committee, but I can write to you on detail the carbon price.
Okay, assume that carbon price is is accurate. Assume that's the one that bears out in reality. What's your assessment, given that businesses are hurting? Given that in your opening words at the start of this session, you said that businesses pay the price if we get energy policy wrong. Your assessment on the extent to which that carbon price would hit businesses, jobs, investment?
Well, I'm not going to just endorse these assumptions in the way that you are suggesting. But what I am going to say to you is that we can definitely achieve 2030 clean power in a way that is good for business. And if you think about the response of industry right across the board to this document that we produced in December, whether it's in manufacturing or whether it's in the electricity sector or in gas, there is actually wide endorsement of this plan. And the reason there is endorsement of this plan is because people have been crying out for a framework and for certainty, and that is what we're providing.
Do you think it would be wise to ask NESO to do any more modelling?
We work with NESO all the time on these issues. We work hand in glove with NESO, I mean, not just on modelling, but on all of these questions, because they have a crucial role in the system, and they have a crucial role in helping us to deliver clean power. But I just got to be honest with you, the worst thing for business in the last few years has been their massive exposure to what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine, because that sent business costs absolutely through the roof. And there are businesses in my constituency and yours who haven't recovered from that. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses. So if you're asking me, do I think that it's the pro-business measure is to back off, is to say let's just rely on fossil fuels, let's gamble, let's keep our fingers crossed, let's play in the fossil fuel casino and hope that geopolitical events mean that fossil fuel prices don't go up, I part company with you.
So, as I've got a bit of time, Chair, and given that Secretary of State has referred to prices and what drives business confidence, we see a lot of levies applied to one side of energy rather than the other. The government is pushing heat pumps, right? Businesses regularly cite to me that electricity prices are one of their biggest inhibitors day to day in terms of running costs, but also future investment plans. Do you agree that energy market reform is something the government should aspire to?
Absolutely.
Electricity market reform.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you talking about where levies are?
It would include where levies are applied, but also perhaps broader reform of the electricity market.
Well, look, that is definitely something that we are embarked upon, and I covered it earlier, and these are difficult questions. Look, on the issue of electricity prices, I think this is the potential, both for business and for families, of clean power by 2030, which is giving some certainty to business and others, giving that security that frankly they haven't had for a very long time and that I've referred to.
What Miliband constantly harps on about is community share, i.e. giving back to the community. That's how it is in Denmark, in Germany. Yes, it sounds nice, but have you noticed he never speaks clearly? Always vague statements. We'll look into it, we'll evaluate it, maybe it will happen. This is nothing new to me because Miliband was always the same when he was leader. Remember that infamous stone tablet scandal? He said, "We've written our election promises on stone, they won't be forgotten." And then the public forgot them so thoroughly that they wiped out his political career. Now it's the same mindset. Sell hope to the public, then leave nothing behind. Labour has always been like this, a supposedly populist party that in practice opens doors for big business. Every sentence that comes out of Miliband's mouth is contradictory. Do you think they will really give the public a share, or is it just the same old Labour classic? For me, the answer is clear. This will end in disappointment again. Let's move on to the North Sea. Miliband says, "We are not closing existing fields, but there will be no new licenses either." Friends, what kind of fasting is this? What kind of cabbage pickle? On the one hand, he talks about energy security. On the other, he restricts the North Sea, the country's only trump card. So what happens when production declines as the fields age? We will have to import more gas and oil from abroad. So, independence or dependence? Miliband and Labour's choice is very clear. This reminds me of the 1970s, when we paid the price of dependence on imports with crises. Labour should have learned from history, but it is repeating the same mistake. Then they come out and say, "We are following the science." This is not science, it is pure ideology. And it is the workers, the families, the ordinary British people who will pay the price for this ideology. Can we really call this a just transition? We look at the NISO report. They say the carbon price could be £147 per tonne, the highest in the world. Miliband's department says, "No, we're calculating it £60 lower." Come on, this is blatantly deceiving the economy. Businesses are already struggling to breathe, bills are skyrocketing, inflation is crushing us. But Labour is still peddling pipe dreams on paper. Friends, this reminds me of Gordon Brown's rosy budgets. They always played with the numbers, always postponed the crisis. The result? An even bigger crisis. Now Miliband is using the same tactic in energy policy, but the difference is this. This time, the crisis won't just be financial, it will also be an energy supply crisis. Think about it. How will businesses survive under such a burden? How will they protect their employees? Why would investors come to Britain? The answer is simple. They won't. Miliband and Starmer say, "The business community trusts our plan." Trust? Really? The business community is forced to remain silent because they see no alternative. But everyone knows that if Labour comes to power, bills will rise, taxes will increase, and investment will flee. You are instilling fear, not trust, in the business community. Remember, what was the main reason for Brexit? To make our own decisions, to free our economy from external dependence. But now Miliband comes along and chains us to the EU's carbon prices. Do you think that's a coincidence? I don't. Labour is looking for indirect ways to return to the EU at every opportunity. This energy plan is one such way. It sounds environmentally friendly, but in reality, it's surrender to Brussels policies. Would you call this independence? I call it betrayal. What do you call it? Miliband's art of evasion is legendary. He says, "We are constantly working with NISO." But whenever a report comes along that doesn't suit him, he just tosses it aside. So if he doesn't like the results, he ignores them. Just like Starmer's attitude during the Brexit process. First he said, "I respect the people's decision." Then behind the scenes, he pushed for a second referendum. That's Labour's DNA. Say one thing to the people, do the opposite behind the scenes. The only constant in Miliband's political career has been this hypocrisy. Now they are playing the same game with energy policy. Slogans instead of facts, contradictions instead of transparency. Do you think such a party will do any good for this country? In my opinion, the only thing that will come of it is more chaos and more uncertainty. Finally, the electricity market reform. Yes, reform is needed, but what Miliband is proposing is completely empty. It is unclear who will be taxed, who will pay, and what burden will fall on families. It's the same old Labour mindset. Let's make the promise first, then we'll think about the details. Remember, when Miliband was leader, he was shouting about the cost of living crisis, but failed to come up with any solutions. Now it's the same. This country's business community wants clarity, the public wants justice, but what Labour offers is uncertainty, chaos, and higher bills. In short, Miliband's plan is, in my view, a PR fairy tale. The story is written by Ed Miliband, marketed by Keir Starmer. But the outcome is not hard to predict. It will be the public who suffers. What do you think? Is this really in the country's best interest, or is it just another Labour fairy tale? Share your thoughts in the comments. And friends, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Like it so it reaches more people.